I'm Neil Shigley. I'm an artist. I live and work here in San Diego. I teach professor at San Diego State University. I teach drawing and I teach illustration. This series began in 2005 as not a series. It began with one portrait. That started with a walk to a gallery in Little Italy here in San Diego with an artist friend. As we approached the gallery, my friend and I noticed this man who appeared homeless standing outside with this incredible face, and we looked at each other, we looked at him. My friend said, "Neil, you ought to do a portrait of that guy." So we continued walking into the gallery, the bright lights and the beautiful people and the paintings, and I kept thinking about him, and I decided in that show I was going to ask him if he would let me do his portrait. So when I went out, he was gone. I've been looking for that guy ever since. This is Mark. I met Mark some years back. He always was standing at the exit at the freeway that I take to my home. And he always had a big grin on his face, had a very positive sign, looked directly in people's eyes. And one day I decided to stop and have a conversation with him, the first of many. He is, I consider Mark a prophet, very eloquent, well-spoken, very deep. We spoke at length. I would bring up a topic and he would talk and talk, very spiritual, very deep. Every time I walked away from a conversation with him, I felt uplifted. This is Linda. Meeting with her was very brief. As far as technique for these, it starts with a walk. I will approach somebody, which is the hardest part, coming into their space. I'll pretty directly ask them, "I'm an artist, I'd like to do your portrait." Some say yes, some say no. I will give them all money. If they agree to the portrait, I'll talk with them as long as they'll talk. I have a series of questions that I always ask them: their name, their age, where they're from, what their first night on the street was like, why they are on the street, where they sleep, where they find their food. And I always ask, what makes you happy on the street? What do you fear? When I set about to work, I'll do a drawing and I'll blow it up large. I'll put it on my plate and I begin to carve it. I'm carving out the white shapes here. I'll roll that with ink, put a piece of paper down and press it by hand. Once I have the print, I mount it onto a canvas stretched over a panel. At the top, I have their name, their age, where I met them, the year I met them. And at the bottom, I put a symbol which hobos used in the Great Depression, which describes the attributes of a place. Is it safe? Is it good for water? Is it people mean here? Each has a meaning. It's a pretty elaborate graphic language that I'm not sure if anybody ever knew all of the meanings, but the ones that were important to them, they did know. And originally, I was approaching this series purely as an artist, trying to capture form, trying to capture likeness. These people possess this incredible character that's hard-earned through sometimes many years of life on the street and the daily struggles that can bring. But the more people I met, the more people I talked to about their daily lives, their routines, the struggles, things that made them happy, things they feared, where they kept their food, where they slept, the more I started to look at this series as a human being with great empathy for these people and the situation that they and so many like them are in. I've entitled this series Invisible People, because for many people who encounter somebody in the street, they ignore them, they avoid them, they actively make them invisible. So by presenting them on this large scale, it forces people in a room with them to confront them, the situation they're in perhaps, making them visible. So using the word homeless in some cases a bit, I think, misleading. It's accurate, but it implies that it's a group and they're all in it together, where in reality it's Dave who had a leg injury and couldn't go back to work. It's Bruce who had a drinking problem, Ruth who had to leave the house for domestic violence, Bella whose mother was homeless. It's Eddie who had mental problems. So each has a very unique reason why they're homeless and why they may the street. When we look at other people and look for the things that make us different, it's easy to cast them aside and forget them. But when we look at people for the things that make us alike, and there's so many more of those things, if we search for those things, if we embrace those things, it opens the doors for peace, opens the doors for love. Art has the power to focus attention, in this case on the homeless. When you focus attention, you can raise awareness. When that happens, change can happen on a society level, community level, all the way down to an individual, one person treating another with respect.